Hi, welcome back to TABU. This is the fourth episode, and it's about underwriting. I'm Katrina, and I'm joined with Danny and EJ. Danny, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Danny. I am the head of underwriting for TAB, and I've been with TAB now coming up to 2 years.
Hi, I'm EJ. I'm an underwriter at TAB. I've been with TAB now just under 2 months.
Great, and same format as last time. We've got the top 5 questions you guys have been asking, and we'll kick things off with question number 1. What is the meaning of underwriting? Let's start with Danny.
Underwriting, I think, can mean many things across different sectors. But for TAB in bridging, what it basically means is we are processing the loan applications. So what we'll do is we'll look at application forms. What's the story? How is the client going to repay our loan at the end of the term? As well as obviously doing the due diligence on the property, getting a valuation. It's basically everything that needs to be done to be checked to make sure that we're comfortable and that the loan is the right loan for us.
And EJ, how do you and Danny kind of work together? Do you do one loan separately? Do you work together on one loan, or is it a team job?
To be honest with you, I'd say it's a lot of teamwork. As mentioned earlier, I've been at the company now just under 2 months, so it's pretty much been both of us looking at things, me learning the way TAB underwrite, Danny obviously overlooking things just to make sure actually, this is the way we look at it, because you get different forms of underwriting in different companies. Everyone's going to have their specific way of doing things. So at this moment in time, we both look at things, and to be fair, 2 eyes are better than one person just looking at it. And
Do you mean 4 eyes?
4 eyes. Sorry. 4 eyes. Let me do that bit again. So,
No.
2. 4 eyes are better than 2. So we're covering all bases that way. So it's a team effort.
Cool. And you kind of mentioned that there are different types of underwriting. What can we kind of expand on that? You know, let's say, so we're in the bridging market.
Yeah.
Who else underwrites?
Well, I think it's quite a widespread term. I think you've got mortgage underwriters, you've got bridging loan underwriters. There'll be people underwriting a credit card application. There'll also be insurance underwriters as well, that assessing the risk basically, which is the short version of what we're doing. It's assessing the risk of a policy or a loan or a credit card, and whether that client's worthy and they're comfortable lending money or giving them an insurance policy.
And it's always about lending?
No. Insurance as well,
of course.
covers it. I believe there are probably other terminologies in sectors that I'm not familiar with, so I won't pretend to know.
No, that's cool. Thanks, guys. Should we go on to question number 2, which is, what is the role of an underwriter? So let's kind of think about your day-to-day job. What does it entail, and who does it involve? Who do you talk to? Yeah, let's start from the top. EJ?
Well, yeah.
I think I'd liken it to the underwriter to being sort of the company's insurance policy. It's really our job to make sure, right, we're looking at this application. Like Danny mentioned earlier, we're looking at the story. Does it make sense as you're digging into it, as you're looking at the threads of everything? Does this add up from the asset that we might be lending against to who the individual or the company is, and ultimately to the exit, and if that's in line. Where I say we are the insurance policy is making sure, one, we're lending to the right people, and ultimately we're going to get our money back. So day to day, we're really looking at applications, dealing with various stakeholders, whether that be the broker or the client directly, or solicitors, and just really reviewing whatever comes in to make sure we get the best possible outcome, not only for the company, but also for the client. Sometimes the right outcome is not to lend, to be perfectly honest with you. So it's just how you also relay that information to them as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think ultimately what our job is to assess the risk. It's looking at, the risk that the property can bring, the risk that the applicant can bring. It's, the risk that the story itself has. It's what are they using the money for? How are they likely to repay? They've got a short period of time with a bridging loan, so you need to make sure that your exit's going to materialise. So that everybody gets their money back and we have a successful loan. So it's basically looking at the risk of the deal in all of its factors and forms, which with property, I'll tell you there can be several things that come up along the way, and it can be quite complex. But yeah, it's basically making a risk assessment and judging whether that risk suits our appetite.
Can you share what the most unusual things come up in your career of underwriting?
That's difficult. I mean, I've underwrote different kinds of loans before. I'd say some of the strangest ones were a property which had been purchased by someone but never registered. So they'd bought a lease for a flat, a long-term leasehold, never registered it, and they come to us and said, "Can you lend on my property, please?" We're like, "Yeah, okay, fine." And it turns out that it was never registered, and they'd owned it for like 12 years. Never actually physically owning the title deeds, never paid their stamp duty on the purchase because it was never registered. You know, it was a bit of a mess. And effectively what we were looking to lend on at the time was the piece of paper that was the lease. You know, there was no title deeds, it wasn't registered at the land registry. So yeah, that was quite an interesting one. But I'm sure there are many others. But yeah, that's one of the main ones that sticks out to me, that we managed to lend on that and, you know, get comfortable on something that was quite out there and quirky.
Cool. Any for you, DJ, off the top of your head?
No, not really. Actually, I did have a situation where, sorry, just thinking about it is actually making me laugh. This was a while back. The asset we were lending on, it was the client's main residence, and surveyor obviously went out to value it. Sorry, we got a call from the surveyor saying, "I'm sorry, I can't value this asset," and we were like, "Why?" He said, "It's an absolute tip. There's just muck all over the property, and I feel like throwing up." And needless to say, that was the end of that. We just couldn't get anyone to go into the property to value it.
Is that
bad? Yeah, apparently it was that bad. He managed to take 1 or 2 photos, and there was like garbage bags all over the living room. And yeah, we tried to get the clients to tidy up the property for the purpose of the valuation, and they never did. So that was the end of that, to be honest.
Fair enough. I don't want to go anywhere like that. So why should anyone else? Cool. Yeah, if we go on to question number 3, which is, what is the underwriting process? Where does it start? Where does it end? And, detail. I like detail in this podcast.
Okay, I'll start with, I suppose the process of a bridging loan starts with the sales team. They'll sell a loan, they'll put forward our product to what they think we're going to be happy with, and then we receive an application form. At that point, we're reviewing the application form, so this will be the first time the underwriters see the deal. So we'll be looking at it, and we'll be assessing what's the property, what are they doing with the funds, how do they intend to repay, how long is the loan, is the pricing right for our appetite. We're looking at all different things. So it starts off with an application form. We review that, and then we go into looking at the title deeds for the property. We'll research the client. If it's a company, if it's an individual, we'll do some background checking there, credit searching, just making sure that the client's got nothing stands out that's going to be untoward. And then I suppose it moves on to instructing our professional team. So we've got the valuation. So we'll look to get a valuer to go out there, assess the valuation of the property, and tell us what it's going to be worth.
Do you always use the same valuer, or is there kind of like several who we might use for different properties? Or?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, there's we have quite a large panel of surveyors. They cover across the country, and after you've used them, and depending on who they are, you've got some of the larger firms that you're more familiar with, that you would say, if you had a development land plot with hundreds of units, you would send a very large surveyor to go and do that. They've got the most trusted in the market to be doing that sort of thing, and then we've got people that are quick and efficient when it comes to doing a very quick turnaround for a bridging loan, and speed is of the essence. We've got the fastest surveyors that are quite familiar with the residential market in certain areas, and yeah, it's got to be a panel that can access and have knowledge across the country as well. So we go from the valuation, we instruct our solicitors. So the solicitors are basically looking more into the title and the legal side of the property. So they'll do that on our behalf, and they'll summarize it in a report to us. So they get instructed, and they liaise with the client solicitors to get all the information they need.
Now, is that the report on title.
It is indeed, yeah.
Yes.
So they send a huge long list of questions to the client solicitor, asking them from everything to do with access, what planning permission, have they done any work to the property, drainage, services, everything that you would expect a solicitor to be asking effectively if you were purchasing a new home. They will ask all the questions and then summarize the responses back to us, point out any particular risks we need to be made aware of, and then once we've got that, we've got a valuation, and providing that comes back at the right level, we've gathered that information, we've done our internal due diligence on the client, the story, the deal, and summarized and reviewed everything as well. So we've always got that second set of eyes. We're never taking the valuer's opinion as gospel, so we'll review that very carefully, look at the comparables provided, and then we also look back at the report on title, make sure there's nothing been missed that we are not aware of in there. So everything gets reviewed by us, and then overall, if we're happy, we then move on to lend them the money.
Great.
That's basically the process in a nutshell.
That's it.
Anything to add?
Sounds easy.
No, that's it. That's
Sounds easy. I wish it was that easy.
It's not. To be fair, it is fun. You kind of feel like a mini investigator, to be honest with you, when you're digging through everything. What I would say is, in a certain way, an underwriter doesn't trust anyone. And when I say that, it's not in a negative way. It's just in the sense we review every single thing that comes in. So whereas you've got a qualified surveyor, as Danny said, who go out and do a valuation, when it comes in, we review that as well, just to make sure it all stacks up. We're comfortable with the detail. Our solicitor will send us information, the report on title, but we review that as well. We're making sure, and that's where I kind of say not that we don't trust in a bad way, but in a good way. We're just cross-referencing, making sure we are comfortable with every bit of information that comes in. It's to protect the client as well as it is to protect us and the business in general. But yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. I believe that was a phone, Danny. Did you not get the memo of no phones before podcast?
I did now.
Great.
Just to tap into what EJ's just said there. We have had situations before, where you can become over-reliant on these professionals, and the reason we have come across valuations which we've not agreed with. These are the professionals, and they're giving us their opinion, and with the tools available to us, especially now with the technology we've got, we can get a pretty good view ourselves, and if we don't think something's right, we have challenged that, and surveyors have come back to us and gone, what, actually I think you're right, and reduced valuations because of it. There is value in making sure that you don't become complacent and that you are checking everything. Even though these are the people we've hired as our professionals, everything gets checked.
Yeah. Got to, I suppose, isn't it? Otherwise it puts everyone else at risk. Cool. Thanks for that. So if we go on to question number 4, I believe it's 4. I can't see. Oh, yes. Is underwriting the last step of the process?
I suppose underwriting is the big step of the process, I believe. Underwriting is probably the largest part for let's use the bridging loan application part. The sales process generally is they get the summary. So what's the property? What's the loan for? How are they going to repay? But the underwriting part is the longer part. It's gathering all of that information, valuers, professionals, solicitors, and everything that we need from the client, assessing all of it, getting reports, reading them, reviewing everything. It's certainly the bigger part of it. And, it's rare that in sales, you either get it's in criteria or it's out criteria. When it gets to underwriting, it's where we get down to the dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and get down to the real nitty gritty of it.
Yeah. And then I suppose the only step I can think after is kind of funding and then transfer, like getting the funds to borrower. Would you call that part of the underwriting process? Is that kind of in your control as well, or is that operations?
Obviously we split it out into separate departments internally. So we have. Excuse me. And that's Nick of all people. Why is my phone not silencing?
That's why Nick's not on this podcast today.
Because he's decided to ruin it for everybody else.
He's banned. He's banned from TV.
There we go.
Nick, when you're watching this,
Naughty.
Yes, Nicholas. Sorry, where was I?
Last step.
Yes, so funding is kind of the last step of the process. Internally, we've got obviously accounts teams and people that deal with the money. So it's not physically me and EJ counting out pound notes. That's not quite how it works. So yeah, it's the last step. That is to do with raising funds. People are putting their contribution, or if it's through a funding line, we gather the funds. And then there is a final part of the process. The solicitor's obviously going to work out everything from, this is the gross loan offer. We reduce it by interest retention, set up costs and fees, administration costs, everything then gets deducted, and then the client has a net outcome at the end that then gets transferred to them. But yeah, that's mostly dealt with via solicitors and our accounts team transferring the money between themselves.
So kind of middle but long step in between.
Yes. In answer to the question, the underwriting is the middle, but the long step, because there is a whole nother step that comes after in the loan life cycle, which is, it's about client management and making sure that, once we've lent the money, that the client is doing what they intended to set out to do, and the story that we were told happens and it's plausible and it's realistic and it's all going to plan, or sometimes on occasions it doesn't. So there's the back end sort of collections part of the process as well, and customer management.
And is that someone where you guys step in as well? Do you kind of go back and reevaluate midway through a loan, look at its process, or is that someone else's?
So we do have a separate department that generally look after loans after completion. So what they'll do is they'll check in with the borrowers and make sure things are going to plan, that their exit is looking to materialise on time within the time frame of their loan. So that is dealt with by another department, but there are sort of crossovers, because what bridging is really good for is bridging a gap. So there's a reason that they take short-term funding before they go on to maybe long-term funding. That might be they're renovating a property. It might be that they're refurbing, then going to let out a commercial property. So recently, for example, one of our one of our clients had finished off a property after renovations and change of use for the planning permission, and now they're looking to get a commercial tenant in. So the building becomes income producing. So that then leads up to them refinancing their loan away. But obviously with the commercial lease, we have to accept and agree to that, because it can have effects on valuation. Is it the right amount of income for the property? Are they underletting it? So are they letting it for less than what they should be? It can have an effect on the value of the property. And if it's a commercial lease, it could be long term. So it could be a 20-year contract for, not the right amount of rent. If that's the case, then we have to get back in touch with our surveyors and ask for their professional opinion, and we have to review the lease, and we bring our solicitors back involved. So there is an element of underwriting sometimes into the back end, but sometimes not. When they've taken the loan, done what they need to do, sell the property, it doesn't really come through to us.
Cool. And I heard rumours you guys sit on the phone to each other all the time, all day since you've been working from home. Is that true? How does that work?
Well, I'll start this off. EJ is obviously quite new, and we've just been allowed out of lockdown. I think we've just been allowed out to slowly mingle into society again. So I had to train him remotely, whereas we couldn't gather at the time. So the best way of doing that is using the technology. So video calls, on conversations through, things like similar to Skype, Zoom, that sort of stuff. Yeah. And, I think what we've done is pretty impressive. It works,
absolutely.
It's not as good as being face to face. You can't replace that. But actually, I think, we have to spend that time on a call to each other as if we were sat in an office next to each other. So if a question comes up, he can just, let me just ask you. So we do spend six odd hours a day just sitting on a muted call, and if they need us, they shout.
Question. What was the longest call you've had with Danny, EJ?
I mean, sometimes we've from 9:30 to 5:30, 6 o'clock. We've just been on that call. And like Danny said, it's great because sometimes we're on mute because we're doing other things, or we might be speaking to somebody else on the other line. But it's just great to know, actually, whilst we're not physically next to each other, we kind of still are next to each other, and we can bounce ideas off each other, and I can ask questions and Danny can give me the answers, or Danny can refer me to where I can get the answers from. et cetera, et cetera. And like Danny said, it's been great, to be honest with you, from a training point of view. I did wonder how the training element of things would work. When I first started, in my head, I was thinking, oh gosh, how is this actually going to work? We're not going to be together. And to be honest with you, after day 1, day 2, I was like, wow, this actually works really well, if I'm being honest. So
I can't lie, I was winging it the whole time.
I would never have known. I really wouldn't have known. So yeah, no, it's great.
Well, unprecedented times. This is the saying of the year, isn't it?
I guess you'll miss each other when life's back to normal. You've got to sit next to each other.
No, I mean, I'll still put my headset on and dial him and
call me next door.
Don't look at me, just talk into the phone.
Yeah, it's strange actually seeing people in the flesh for a while, like after such a long time of seeing them in that little window on a call. It's but I think what we've managed to do and how adaptive everyone's been, I think it's worked out really well.
Yeah.
It goes to show that, and everybody out there as well, it goes to show that working from home can work. Everybody
definitely.
was very anti that pre this, and now we all had to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's gone to prove to a lot of people that were probably like, oh, people won't work, that it does work, and you can train from a standing start whilst never being in the same room.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible nowadays. That we
And
can
now
do
you're
that.
in the same room. What do you think of each other?
You don't need to answer that.
I guess we'll move on to question number 5. So question number 5. How many... Ooh. Question number 5. Do underwriters deny loans very often?
Go on, easy. I think you can take this one.
I don't really think it's a case of denying a loan or really accepting a loan. I personally don't look at it from that angle. Like I mentioned earlier, it's just a case of actually what's right for us as a business and what's right for a client. I can give you an example. Like Danny said, bridging it's short-term lending. So what could seem right, client might think, I need this right now. And it could be a case of actually, yes, you need this right now. We can do it right now. But ultimately, what's your exit? Your exit is just not viable. And if we do this right now, it could end up, putting you in a detrimental, position. So in situations like that, the best thing to do is essentially is a decline, but it's doing what's best for the client, doing what's best for the business. I haven't come across many scenarios where I've had to turn around and say, no, I'm really sorry, we can't do this. There could be various reasons. Sometimes it could be things like the figures just don't tally up. For example, evaluation might come in lower. What you might think your property is worth as against what it's actually worth, not just on a surveyor's opinion, but based on comparables, what's on the market, what's sold, etc., could be wildly different. It might be something comes up at the legal stage. Sometimes people just aren't aware of certain things. I don't expect anyone to go and check the title register and their property day in, day out to make sure, look at the information there. So there could be various things, but what I would say is a great thing about TAB is we're always looking for solutions, to be perfectly honest with you. So we'll exhaust all avenues to make sure we are helping our clients. And if it's not possible, then, we'll say it's not possible, point them in the right direction if possible. And if we meet down the line at some stage when we can help them, then we'll do that. But to be honest with you, that's how I look at it. Danny?
Yeah, I agree. I think the percentage of loans that get declined is not huge. We are always forward thinking, looking for solutions rather than this doesn't work. Being a bridging lender, we try to be as flexible as possible with these risks because we expect the weird and wonderful. Because if it was straightforward, they would go down the residential mortgage market route, or they would have a buy-to-let mortgage anyway. Yeah. So we expect quirkiness, and we are adaptive to that. And there are a number of different reasons why a case could be declined. But we are always looking to be as flexible as possible to try and accommodate. But there are occasions where something is too risky, or there are too many small risks that collectively add up to a greater risk profile than we're willing to accept, because there are numerous things which are unquantifiable, uncertain, that we can't get 100% comfortable with, or that we can't verify, because a lot of the time we're being told the story by the client. Quantifying a story is very difficult because it's not something that you have a legal document for. It's just, this is my plan, and we have to trust sometimes that the plan is going to come to. So it can be a very difficult task to understand it, but we go to great lengths to try and fully immerse ourselves in that story and understand if it's plausible. We'll speak to borrowers directly. We'll get the information straight from them. We're not always reliant on third parties or introducers to provide information. So it's a rarity, and it's not something we like to do very often, but inevitably, yes, it does have to happen, that not every loan is right for us.
Yeah. What I would add to that as well is, I'd always say, first step to avoid being in a situation where we can't be of assistance is just be honest, be open, be transparent, give us all the information. Some people will sometimes think too much information, but to be fair, the more we know, the better. You can save yourself a lot of time, and to be fair, you can save yourself a lot of money if we have all the information and we can do our jobs far more effectively, and we can save everybody time if it's a case of actually, do you know what, on the basis of what you're saying, on the basis of what we can see, we can go ahead and do this, great. Or it might just be, actually, do you know what, because of XYZ, we can't do it. And in situations like that, you save yourself time, you save yourself money as well. So just be open, be transparent.
Information is important, and I think that goes as far as to say, if you're looking at a loan and saying this isn't right for us, I think the best way to say that is either you speak to your client or you speak to your introducer or broker who's introduced you the deal, and you tell them exactly what our perspective is. So you explain to them every risk that we're looking at and why we can't get comfortable. And I think sometimes, rather than the lender says no, the unapproachable underwriter approach, which some people tend to have, that they can't get hold of an underwriter, you've only got your salesperson to relay a message. I will call a broker personally and explain to them exactly what my issues are with a case. And 95% of the time they come away going, thank you, I appreciate that, and I can see exactly where you're coming from. So it's although rejection is inevitable sometimes, it's about how you conduct it as well and how you deliver it, to make sure that everybody understands, because just saying no just isn't good enough for a lot of people to accept, because there is money on the table at this time.
And that's why Danny has been nominated a finalist for Underwriter of the Year.
That's right.
Woohoo!
He's the man.
Huge news.
Yes. Because I know how to reject a case.
Couple of last ones before we wrap things up. But how did you guys get into underwriting? We'll start with Danny.
Probably like most people, sort of fell into this industry really. Going back to the start of my career, I suppose, I was working on a customer service desk for a payday lender. Not my finest hour, but it was a means. It was a job at the time. I had a mortgage thing and other half to support. So I went into a payday lender, and they set up a secondary company within the business, which was second charge mortgage lending. And they recruited me out of the team, I guess because I must have been doing all right. They recruited me from that team and said, we want you to come work for this new company. So I was a bit hesitant at first, but, with fantastic support at the time of the manager, he trained me up completely in how to review a case, how to underwrite a second charge mortgage. And I went from strength to strength in that business as it grew, and we sort of grew it from the ground up, which was good. So I got to see different aspects as this business grew. There was, there was dealing with the money, there was dealing with the collections, there was all of the things we discussed previously that, I got a hand in, which really helped me excel my experience and understanding of everything. And from there, I was there for several years, and by the time I left that business, I was the office manager, looking after the general sort of running, I suppose, of the company, with the underwritings, collections, everything like that. I left there and decided to go into bridging. So from there, I started in sales. So my initial point was just reviewing cases that came in from the BDMs and issuing out sets of terms. So do we like this deal? Does it fit within criteria? Yes, no, then issue a set of terms. And from that point, I joined TAB, and we went through some of the sales stuff and then up to underwriting from there. And yeah, I've been underwriting with TAB for a while now.
Great. EJ?
I mean, my banking's predominantly finance, so I started off retail banking, and then from there went into the debt management side of things. Also did a bit of recruiting for investment banks. And then I went to work for a brokerage, and I think that for me was when I really started thinking about the underwriting process in general in more detail. I just wanted to know, who are these people that keep telling me yay or nay, and who are these people that take so long to come back to me? And it made me think, I want to know what they do. I mean, I made some friends with some people from different companies, and you kind of learn a bit more about what they do and how they think and how they, you know, really just look at things from different angles. And it just made me become a lot more, you know, inquisitive, and I really wanted to get into underwriting. So opportunity presented itself, and then I did it, and then, you know, the opportunity presented itself to come to TAB, and I thought to myself, actually, do you know what? Yeah, this seems like it's the gravy for me, you know. From what I could see, I liked, you know, the way things were looked at, and yeah, I'm here now, and so far so good.
Just to add to that, obviously you're relatively new to TAB, so how does TAB compare to some of your previous underwriting experiences, and from what you learnt being a broker and previously an underwriter? How do we compare? How are we doing?
If I'm being perfectly honest with you, I don't just say it because I work for TAB, but for me, I think the TAB way of underwriting is actually brilliant. It's transparent. It's fully transparent. It's open. So at all times we're accessible. I think I found in a lot of other places you can't speak to an underwriter. It's just literally computer says no. You know, there's a wall between you and that underwriter, whereas you might want to go directly to an underwriter and find out, okay, well, why have you done this? Or you want to speak to them and have that conversation, because sometimes it's not everything you're going to understand from putting notes in the system or sending an email. Sometimes you have that conversation, and in TAB, we are accessible. You know, brokers or clients can pick up the phone and have the conversation with us. The way we look at things, the way we analyze things as well, we use real world things. I mean, that's the reality of it. There's no real special formula to it. So I think the underwriting process here is really great. From my previous places of underwriting, I'd also say we do look at things in depth. Which is really great. I think if you're someone who has a really inquisitive mind, then, you know, look into underwriting, and if an opportunity ever came about in TAB, then TAB's the place for you, because you can dig deeper into things, get a better understanding of things, and naturally that only increases your knowledge as an underwriter, which would just keep you in good stead. So yeah, it's great. It's great.
Final question. If MI5 got in touch, do you think you'd be a good spy?
No.
Investigator, I should say. Then.
It's a slightly different skill set. Yeah, I never really thought of myself as Bond.
Maybe I should say investigator. But do not spies investigate?
I guess, yeah, but they have cool gadgets and stuff which we don't have. I mean,
we can get you some gadgets.
Oh, okay, then I'm in.
What about the car?
Straight on the marketing budget, it's fine.
Who are we spying on? No, yeah, I think you've got to have a certain mindset to be an underwriter.
Yeah.
I think the best underwriters are people, if that makes any sense. They're people that, like, I've had a crossover with sales versus underwriting, and I think being able to deal with people and that sales kind of approach where you've worked in that customer service role or that sales role before, but you have that inquisitive mind, because attention to detail is obviously key.
Yeah.
Making sure that we're seeing everything that's in front of us, and sometimes some of the stuff that's not in front of us, it's about piecing pieces of the puzzle together to get a broader picture that isn't actually there. You're reading between the lines in some cases to try and understand what's going on. and then that can lead to more questions, and you can be amazed what things you can start finding out when you start probing into things. And so it's an inquisitive mind, but I think having a good balance between the two of being a people person and able to deal with your broker and explain things to them effectively, whilst being able to, obviously get into the deep stuff and have that attention to detail, I think makes the best sort of person for the job. So MI5, I'm here.
That's Underwriting 101 with TAB. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. Thanks all for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. And if you've got anything you want us to answer, leave it in the comments and we'll pick it up next time.